All right, good evening. My name is Edward Rodriguez, and I'll be talking to you guys about China's economy, Chapter 5. This is my second recording because the first one was way too long. I was already at 15 minutes, and I wasn't even halfway through. So I'm going to try to go quickly. You have to forgive me because I've been sick the last couple of days, so I'm getting over a cold. I'm going to try to give you 100%. And yeah, so let's get started. I'm going to briefly be talking to you guys about China's growth in the last couple of years. Its traditional mixed economy, the time between the revolution to reform, its successful transition to the market economy, address some issues of whether its growth is sustainable, and some of the challenges and constraints it's going to face or is facing at the time or in the future. So, without further ado, growth. In the last couple of years, China has consistently hit about 10% growth of GDP per year. They go along the ethos of letting some get rich first, and then helping the rest catch up. It has the largest number of billionaires outside the U.S., but one of the growing problems of that is wage inequality is rising. You have about 36% who live on less than $2 a day. A little bit to say about the resiliency of the market is that even in 2008, during the crisis, China was still growing at 10% a year. But it's mostly attributed to its large growth or its large population size. Some interesting stats is that China is, at the time of this writing, even now, is still exports about twice the global average. 2002 was the sixth largest exporter. 2009 is number one, and does about 10% of the world's total. It has a growing FDI, foreign direct investment, owns about 17% of the U.S. debt. And for the most part, it's been following the Asian model of importing parts and then transforming them into finished goods. It's kind of China's being considered like the world's factory right now. Everything's made in China because of that. Stuff comes from around, or the building blocks go into China. China puts out a finished product and sends it out to the rest of the world, like U.S. and Europe. And it's a critical part of the Asian supply chain because it gets a lot of these supplies from its surrounding neighbors. China has historically been dominated by labor-intensive manufacturing type factories, where, for example, they make clothing, footwear, toys, stuff like that. But now they're moving into more non-traditional items such as electronics and machinery and whatnot. Going into its traditional mixed economy. Forgive me if I mispronounce these. The Qin and Han dynasties have never really had, or I should say feudalism has dropped or was almost dead by the time these dynasties had been established. You start having a rise in control or land control by local landowners. You still have workers who are being exploited, working long hours to fill the tax obligations, but the thing is you start having a rise in personal privatization of, like, you have merchants, people making money on their own. On top of this too, the state actually created factories and monopolies and mines and whatnot to help get resources, stuff like make bricks, mine gold, silver, iron. And with the rise of all this economy stuff going on, you have the rise of the merchant who's buying and selling goods just solely to make money by giving these to the public officials and to wealthy landowners. One of the biggest things you have that boosts the economy at this time is the introduction of double and triple cash crops. You have this new rice that's coming from the rest of Asia, which allows you to harvest several times a year, which more food, more population, and you start having the rise of smaller owned plots. You start having a move of population going from the rural areas to the cities to sell various goods. There's more money, so now there's a lot more traveling around. They can do their own thing. And you also have the rise of families, like family groups owning their own businesses, selling different things, doing their own trainings for a certain trade. You have brokers being set up by the state to make sure that the family groups don't make a monopoly, they don't fix the prices, they also go around collecting tax. More money means more credit, more lending. But there wasn't a big investment in new technologies because a lot of the artisans feared that this would replace them and make them obsolete, or their goods obsolete and their services obsolete. Moving into a little more modern history, you do have a lot more modern factories being made. There's not too many, and you do have some of the peasants going there working for low wages, but the thing is that these factories are just competing with the local villages and the local economy, and ends up deflating everything all around. To make things worse, you do have the rise of the warlords due to all the instability coming around from the British and everything. Things start to get divided, but the problem when you have war is you have the instability of it all. You have, people are dying, things are getting ravaged, land is getting ravaged. There's high taxes to support battles, to support the warlords. The warlords are taking the taxes and using the money for themselves. Infrastructure and services are being neglected. Not only that, you have natural disasters going around this time. And the Nationals get in control in 1911, but the problem that they face is that still they have to contend with the warlords who aren't united, and you also have the invading Japanese, which just made everything harder for them, which then leads to Mao. Mao is able to take control at the end of World War II, and he implements the first 5-year plan, which is actually successful. You have about an 8.5 annual rate of growth overall. He's able to curb inflation and start production, working with the factory workers, making sure that production gets made, the economy starts getting boosted. It's all based on the Soviet model, where there was a huge focus on iron and steel. They were able to mobilize the workforce to work on all this. They offered lifetime employment, offered local services. But the Soviet model didn't meet the needs of China because compared to the Soviet Union, China just had too high of a population, the economy just wasn't right for it, and they didn't have the same level of technology as the Soviet Union did. So Mao had to rebuild the whole new plan from scratch. And then came the Great Leap Forward, which was to move the entire country quickly into technology, to be more technology, to advance in technology. Like I said, I'm having a hard time. But it was a disaster. They mobilized a lot of peasants into communes, but they ended up neglecting agriculture, and as a result, there was large famines, there wasn't food around, and they just neglected a lot of things that needed to get taken care of. Afterward, you had the Cultural Revolution, which still hurt the economy and the country more. A lot of political takeovers, purgings. They started attacking intellectuals. It was just not a good thing overall at all. But then you had a new order comes in. They realized that for the economy to grow, you need everything to be stable. Once again, like I said, that was a problem with the warfare. When you have politicals and social stability is very crucial and critical to economic growth. All this fighting about with the Cultural Revolution, the ideology, class struggles is just counterproductive. But it went slowly with the opening of the markets, making this a market economy. It was a trial and error approach. 2 steps forward, 1 step back if they needed to. They just did everything very slowly so things wouldn't fall apart. They wouldn't get too far ahead and fall into the river. Crossing the river, searching each stone first. They believed that a strong economy would boost politics, which in turn would... they knew they did